Claire Mitchell stood at the viewing port of the transport ship, watching the Valdrin homeworld grow larger in the window. The planet looked nothing like Earth, where her home had blue oceans and green continents. This world showed dark obsidian mountains and crimson skies that swirled with purple clouds. She pressed her hand against the cool glass and took a deep breath.
"We're approaching the landing zone, Ambassador," the pilot called from the cockpit. 20 minutes until touchdown. Ambassador."
The title still felt strange to Claire, even after 3 years of carrying it. She was only 32 years old, young for such an important position, but the war with the Valdrin Empire had changed everything. Humanity needed people who could think quickly and speak carefully, people who could negotiate with beings that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years before humans even learned to make fire. The war had been brutal, not because of massive battles or planetary destruction, but because it never really started. The Valdrin had simply appeared at the edge of human space 15 years ago and declared that humanity's expansion must stop. They had drawn a line across the stars and said, "Cross this, and we will erase you from existence." Humanity had tested that line once. A colony ship carrying 5,000 people had crossed into Valdrin territory, claiming it was an accident. The Valdrin had disabled the ship with technology humanity couldn't understand, transported every single person off the vessel, and then made the entire ship disappear. No explosion, no debris. It simply ceased to exist. Then they had returned the colonists to human space with a message. Next time, we keep the people too. After that, humanity had stopped testing. But the border situation couldn't last forever. Human populations were growing, and they needed new worlds. The Valdrin wouldn't move their line. Tension had built for over a decade, and both sides knew that eventually something would break. Humanity would push too far, or the Valdrin would decide that even the current human territory was too much. That's when Emperor Casthar had sent his message. The transmission had arrived at Earth's diplomatic headquarters on a Tuesday morning, and Claire had been one of the first to see it. The Emperor's face had filled the screen, reptilian and ancient, with golden eyes that seemed to look directly into her soul even through the recording. "Humans!" the Emperor had said in perfect English, his voice deep and resonant. "You are young and ambitious. We are old and patient. These traits need not lead to war. I propose an alliance of blood and promise. Let one of your representatives marry my son, Prince Vorath. Let our families join, and let this union stand as proof of peace between our peoples." The diplomatic corps had argued for 3 months about what to do. Some called it a trap. Others said it was an insult, a way for the Valdrin to claim ownership over humanity through marriage. A few believed it was genuine, that the Valdrin truly wanted peace. Claire had volunteered during the final debate session. She had stood up in the assembly hall and said simply, "I'll do it." When the council members had pressed her for reasons, she had told them the truth. Because war with the Valdrin means the end of everything we've built. Because this might actually work. And because if it doesn't, better that one person suffers than billions. Now, 3 months later, she was here. The transport ship shuddered as it entered the planet's atmosphere, and Claire gripped the safety rail to steady herself. She had studied everything humanity knew about the Valdrin. She had learned their language, their customs, their history. She knew that they valued strength and honesty above all else. She knew that they had conquered 47 different civilizations over the millennia, but had also shown mercy to those who surrendered with dignity. What she didn't know was whether they could truly make peace with equals. Humanity wasn't surrendering. This marriage was supposed to be a partnership, a bridge between two powers. But the Valdrin had never treated anyone as equals before. The ship landed with a gentle thump on a platform of black stone. Through the window, Claire could see hundreds of Valdrin gathered in formation. They stood perfectly still, their scaled skin glinting in the crimson light of their sun. They were tall, most of them 7 or 8 feet in height, with powerful bodies and faces that mixed reptilian and humanoid features in ways that struck Claire as both beautiful and alien. "Final check, Ambassador," said Lieutenant Harris, the security officer assigned to escort her.
"Are you absolutely certain about this?"
Claire turned from the window and smiled at the young man. He had been nervous the entire trip, convinced that the Valdren were going to kill them all the moment they stepped off the ship.
"I'm certain, Harris. And even if I wasn't, we're here now."
"No going back." "You could refuse at the last minute," Harris suggested.
"Say you've changed your mind. We could leave." "And then the war comes," Claire said quietly.
"And millions die. No, Harris."
"We go through with this." The ship's door opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure.
The air that rushed in was warm and dry, carrying scents Claire couldn't identify. She straightened her diplomatic uniform, a simple white suit that humanity had designed to look respectful but not submissive, and walked down the ramp. A delegation of Valdren waited at the bottom. The central figure was clearly Prince Vorath. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, with deep blue scales that darkened to black at his extremities. His eyes were the same gold as his father's, but younger, sharper. He wore robes of silver and crimson that seemed to shift color as he moved.
"Ambassador Claire Mitchell,"
Vorath said, his voice carrying clearly across the platform. "You honor us with your presence."
"Welcome to Valdros Prime."
Claire bowed, not too deep, as she had been instructed.
"Prince Vorath, the honor is mine."
"I come in peace and in hope for our people's futures." Something flickered in Vorath's eyes. Surprise, perhaps? She couldn't read Valdren expressions well yet. He gestured toward a massive structure in the distance, a temple of black stone that rose like a mountain from the ground. "The ceremony will take place at sunset, as is our tradition. My attendants will help you prepare." 2 female Valdren stepped forward. They moved with liquid grace, and Claire noticed that their scales were finer than Vorath's, almost delicate. They led her away from the landing platform, through corridors of carved obsidian decorated with crystals that glowed with internal light. The preparation chamber was enormous, with a ceiling that stretched up into darkness. The attendants helped Claire remove her uniform and dressed her in Valdren's ceremonial robes. The fabric was strange, almost alive, warm against her skin. They painted symbols on her hands and face with something that glowed faintly blue. "You are very brave," one of the attendants said suddenly. She had introduced herself as Lissa. Most beings would be terrified. "I am terrified," Claire admitted. "But I'm good at not showing it." Lissa's face shifted in what might have been a smile. "That is a valuable skill." "Our prince is also skilled at hiding his feelings. You may be well matched. Have you met him? What is he like?" The attendants exchanged glances. The second one, Mara, spoke carefully. "Prince Vorath is dutiful. He serves his father and his people above all else. He did not choose this marriage, but he will honor it because the Emperor commands it." Claire nodded slowly. She hadn't expected love, or even friendship. This was a political arrangement, nothing more. As long as Vorath was willing to maintain the appearance of a functional marriage, that would be enough. As sunset approached, the attendants led Claire through the temple to a vast circular chamber open to the sky. The crimson sun was sinking toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the assembled crowd. Thousands of Valdren had gathered, filling the temple and the grounds beyond. Claire had never seen so many of them in one place before. Prince Vorath stood at the center of the chamber, beside a raised platform of crystal that pulsed with strange light. Behind him stood Emperor Casthar himself, even more imposing in person than he had been in the transmission. Around the edges of the chamber, Claire saw elderly Valdrin in robes of deep purple. Priests, she assumed. The ceremony began with words in the ancient Valdrin language, sounds that Claire's throat could never reproduce. The priests chanted in harmonies that made the air itself vibrate. Then Vorath spoke, his voice carrying across the chamber. Claire's translator implant rendered his words in her mind. I, Vorath, son of Kazthar, prince of Valdros, accept this bond. I swear to honor this union, to respect this alliance, and to uphold the treaty between our peoples. His words were formal, careful, exactly what Claire had expected. Then the priests turned to her, and one gestured for her to speak. Claire had memorized the Valdrin vows, but as she stood there under the alien sky, surrounded by thousands of beings who could end humanity with a thought, she felt something shift inside her. These weren't just words. This was real. She was binding herself to Vorath, to his people, to this strange new future. But more than that, she realized, she was making a promise. And Claire Mitchell had been raised to believe that promises mattered. Her grandmother had taught her that your word was the most valuable thing you owned, that a promise made should be a promise kept, no matter the cost. So when she spoke, she didn't just recite the Valdrin vows. She spoke from her heart, the way she would have if this were a real wedding to someone she loved. I, Claire Mitchell, daughter of Earth, representative of humanity, accept this bond with complete conviction. I promise to stand beside Vorath as his partner and wife. I swear to protect him from all harm, to honor him in all things, and to love him until the stars themselves go dark and the universe falls silent. The moment the words left her mouth, something happened. The crystal platform beneath them exploded with light, so bright that Claire had to close her eyes. She felt energy surge through her body, burning and freezing at the same time. Around her, she heard gasps and cries of shock from the assembled Valdrin. When the light faded and Claire could see again, she found Vorath staring at her with an expression of absolute terror. Behind him, Emperor Kazthar had taken a step backward, his golden eyes wide. The elderly priests had fallen to their knees, their faces showing something Claire had never expected to see from the mighty Valdrin. Fear. One of the priests spoke, his voice shaking. She doesn't know. By all the ancient powers, she doesn't know what she's done. Whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. Claire stood frozen, her heart pounding, as thousands of Valdrin began to murmur in voices filled with awe and dread. What had she done? She had only spoken the truth, made promises she intended to keep. But from the reactions around her, Claire realized with creeping horror that she had just changed everything in ways she couldn't begin to understand. The ceremony continued, but Claire barely heard it. She went through the remaining rituals in a daze, accepting a crystal band on her finger, drinking from a shared cup, standing beside Vorath as the priests declared them bound. When it was finally over and the crowd began to disperse, Vorath leaned close to her. His voice was barely a whisper, and for the first time, she heard genuine emotion in it. "What have you done, Claire of Earth? What have you done?" The royal quarters were larger than Claire's entire apartment back on Earth. Walls of polished black stone curved upward into a domed ceiling embedded with crystals that mimicked stars. Furniture carved from single pieces of pale wood stood arranged throughout the space, beautiful and alien. Vorath had shown her to these rooms after the ceremony, explained that they were hers now, and then left without another word. That had been 3 days ago. Claire spent those first days learning to navigate her new life. Servants brought her food she didn't recognize, though they assured her it was safe for human consumption. Lissa and Mara visited each morning to help her dress in Valdrin clothing and teach her the basic etiquette of court life. They were kind, but careful, always watching her with expressions Claire couldn't quite read. She saw Vorath only at formal dinners, where they sat beside each other at a long table surrounded by Valdrin nobility. He spoke to her politely, asking about her comfort and whether she needed anything, but there was a distance in his voice. He looked at her the way someone might look at a bomb that hadn't exploded yet, unsure when or if it would go off. On the fourth day, something changed. Claire woke from an uneasy sleep, with her heart racing. She sat up in bed, breathing hard, filled with an inexplicable certainty that something was wrong. Not wrong with her, but wrong somewhere else. Wrong with Vorath. She threw off the covers and ran to the door, still wearing her sleeping clothes. The guards outside her chambers jerked to attention, surprised.
"Where is Prince Vorath?" Claire demanded. "The prince departed this morning for the northern provinces, my lady," one guard said.
"A diplomatic mission to settle a territorial dispute. He's in danger," Claire said. The words came out with absolute certainty, though she had no idea how she knew. "Something is going to happen to his ship." The guards exchanged glances. "My lady, the prince travels with the best security in the Empire. He is perfectly safe." But Claire knew they were wrong. She could feel it, a cold knot of dread in her chest that had nothing to do with normal worry. This was something else, something deeper. She pushed past the guards and ran down the corridor, not sure where she was going, only knowing she had to do something. She found herself in the communications center, a room filled with screens and Valdrin operators managing information flows across the planet. A senior officer looked up in shock as Claire burst through the door. "Contact Prince Vorath's ship," Claire ordered. "Now." "My lady, I cannot interrupt the prince's mission without authorization from—" "Do it!" Claire's voice came out harder than she intended. And to her surprise, the officer immediately began working his controls. He looked annoyed at the interruption. "What is the meaning of this? Check your ship's shields," Claire said. "Something is wrong with them." "Our shields are functioning perfectly," Vorath said, but even as he spoke, Claire saw concern flash across his face. He turned to someone off-screen and gave a command in the Valdrin language. A pause. Then Claire heard shouting in the background. Vorath's expression changed from annoyance to shock. "How did you know?" he asked, staring at her through the screen. "The shield generators were sabotaged. They would have failed the moment we entered the disputed zone. We would have been vulnerable to attack." Claire had no answer. She just shook her head, feeling the certainty drain away now that the immediate danger had passed. "I just knew. I felt it." Vorath stared at her for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "I'm returning to the palace. We need to talk." He arrived 4 hours later, striding into Claire's quarters without knocking. She had been sitting by the window trying to understand what had happened and jumped to her feet when he entered. "Tell me exactly what you experienced," Vorath said without preamble. Claire described the feeling, the certainty, the need to act. As she spoke, Vorath began to pace, his tail swishing behind him in agitation. "This happened once before," he said. 2 days ago. I was in a meeting with the Trade Council, and one of the ministers offered me refreshment. I was about to drink it, when the cup shattered in his hand. He claimed it was an accident, that he had gripped it too hard, but the liquid inside turned black when it touched the floor. Poison. Someone tried to poison you? Claire's chest tightened with anger she didn't fully understand. Attempts on royal lives are not uncommon in Valdrin politics, Vorath said. But the poison should have worked. It was tasteless, odorless, undetectable. There was no reason for the cup to break at that exact moment. He stopped pacing and looked directly at her. Unless something else intervened. You think I did that?
How? I wasn't even there.
That's exactly the problem, Vorath said. He moved to a chair and sat down heavily, a gesture so human in its exhaustion that Claire felt a pang of sympathy. Claire, do you know what you said during the ceremony? Your exact words? I promise to protect you, to honor you, to love you until the stars go dark, Claire said. I meant it. It seemed like the right thing to say. Most beings who take Valdrin marriage vows speak them as formality, Vorath explained. They recite the words because they must, but there is no power behind them. The ceremony is designed to create a bond between souls, but that bond only forms when both parties speak with absolute truth and complete conviction. Claire felt cold understanding beginning to form, and I spoke with truth and conviction.
You spoke with more than that.
You spoke with the kind of absolute certainty that hasn't been heard in this galaxy for millions of years. Vorath leaned forward, his golden eyes intense. The Valdren used to be more than we are now. In ancient times, our ancestors could shape reality with their will. They made oaths that became law, promises that the universe itself enforced. But that power faded as we grew more cynical, more political.
We stopped meaning what we said, but humans still do,
Claire whispered. Yes, humans are young. You still believe in the power of promises. You still speak truth with your whole hearts. Vorath stood and walked to the window, looking out at the crimson sky. When you made your vows, Claire, you didn't just participate in a ceremony. You invoked an oath of protection, one of the most ancient and powerful forces in existence. You bound yourself to my safety with such conviction that reality itself took notice. Claire sat down slowly, trying to process this. So when you're in danger, I feel it? And somehow I can protect you? More than that, the universe protects me, because you have sworn to do so with absolute truth. The oath doesn't just give you knowledge of danger, it actively works to prevent harm from reaching me. Vorath turned back to her, and she saw fear in his eyes again. Do you understand what this means? The ancient texts speak of such oaths. They say the gods themselves made them in the first days of creation. Oaths that could move worlds, defy death, reshape the fundamental laws of existence. The gods? Claire felt hysteria bubbling up.
I'm not a god.
I'm just a person who kept my word. That's what makes it so powerful, Vorath said.
The gods feared these oaths because once made, they cannot be broken, not by time, not by distance, not by death itself. The universe recognizes absolute truth and gives it absolute power. He moved closer to her, his voice dropping. And the gods feared them for another reason. Because an oath like yours doesn't just protect. If someone manages to harm me despite your oath, the backlash could be catastrophic. The oath will seek balance, and it will use you as the instrument of that balance. You mean I'd become dangerous? Claire said. I mean you could become unstoppable. The oath would channel power through you that no mortal being should possess. You could destroy entire civilizations to avenge harm done to me. Vorath's hands clenched into fists. That's why the gods feared such oaths. Not because of what they could prevent, but because of what they could unleash. Claire stood and walked to him. He tensed as she approached, but didn't back away. Vorath, I'm not going to destroy civilizations. I'm a diplomat.
I solve problems with words, not violence. You say that now.
But if I die, if someone kills me despite your oath, you won't be Claire Mitchell anymore. You'll be a force of nature seeking balance. He reached out and gently took her hand, examining the crystal band on her finger that marked her as his wife. This is why everyone was so frightened at the ceremony. The priests recognized what you had done. They know the old stories. They know what happens when someone makes an oath like yours with true conviction. Claire looked down at their joined hands, his scaled, an alien, hers small and human.
So what do we do? I don't know, Vorath admitted. This hasn't happened in millions of years.
There are no recent cases to study, no guidelines to follow. He hesitated, then added, "My father has called the High Council."
They want to meet with you tomorrow.
To do what?
Some of them want you neutralized before you become too dangerous.
Others want to study you to understand how a human could access ancient power. A few believe you're exactly what was promised, proof that this marriage alliance can work.
Vorath released her hand and stepped back. "I've been ordered to keep distance from you until the council decides what to do. Every moment I spend near you strengthens the oath bond." "But you came here anyway," Claire observed. Something shifted in Vorath's expression, a crack in the careful mask he wore.
You saved my life today. The least I could do was explain why.
He moved toward the door, then paused. "Claire, when you made those vows, did you mean them? The part about love?" Claire thought about lying, about making this easier for both of them. But she had already learned that truth had power here. "I meant them the way I would mean any promise. I committed to trying, to being the best wife I could be, to caring for you as my partner. Whether that becomes love depends on both of us." Vorath nodded slowly.
That's what I thought. That's what makes this so complicated. He opened the door. Sleep well, Claire. Tomorrow will be difficult.
After he left, Claire stood alone in the vast room, looking at the crystal band on her finger. She had come here to prevent a war, to save billions of lives through a simple political marriage. Instead, she had apparently invoked the power of gods and terrified an entire empire. She walked to the window and looked up at the unfamiliar stars above Valdros Prime. Somewhere out there was Earth, was home, was the life she had left behind. She wondered if she would ever see it again, or if she had changed too much, become something too dangerous to ever return. The crystal band on her finger pulsed with faint light, warm against her skin, a reminder of the promise she had made, a promise she intended to keep, no matter what the consequences. Because Claire Mitchell believed that your word was the most valuable thing you owned, and she had given hers, completely. She just hoped the universe could handle the weight of her conviction. The High Council chamber was carved from a single massive crystal that rose from the heart of the palace. Morning light filtered through its translucent walls, casting rainbow shadows across the floor where Claire stood. Around her, elevated platforms held the 12 most powerful Valdren in the Empire, their scales gleaming in colors ranging from deep emerald to burnished copper. Emperor Kazdar sat highest of all, his golden eyes fixed on Claire with an expression she couldn't read. Vorath stood off to the side, required to attend but forbidden from speaking in her defense. He had warned her that morning that some council members were already convinced she needed to die.
Ambassador Mitchell, said Councillor Thane, a massive Valdren with scales like rust.
Do you understand why you have been summoned?
I understand that my wedding vows created an unexpected situation, Claire said carefully. She had spent half the night preparing for this meeting, trying to find words that would save her life without backing down from the truth.
An unexpected situation, repeated Councillor Vess, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Her scales were pale silver, and her eyes held open hostility. You have invoked a power that has not existed in this galaxy for 3 million years. You have accessed forces that even our gods handled with caution. And you call this an unexpected situation? I didn't know what would happen. Claire said, I spoke the truth during a ceremony I was told to participate in. I made promises I intended to keep. That's all. That's all? Thane leaned forward.
You have bound the Crown Prince to you with an oath that supersedes all other laws. If he dies, the backlash could destroy entire star systems.
If he lives, you will grow more powerful with each passing day. How long before you decide that you should rule instead of serve? How long before this power corrupts you? Claire felt anger rising but forced it down. Getting emotional wouldn't help.
Counselor, I came here to prevent a war. That goal hasn't changed.
I have no desire to rule anything or hurt anyone.
Desire changes, said another counselor, an elderly Valdran named Kess, whose scales had faded to almost white with age.
Power corrupts all beings eventually. You may mean well now, but what about in 10 years? 20? 100? Humans live such short lives, but your oath is eternal. Then perhaps you should consider that I don't have much time to become corrupt, Claire said.
I'll be dead of old age long before I could become a threat to an empire millions of years old. Unless the oath extends your life, Vess snapped. We don't know what it will do.
That's the problem. You're an unpredictable variable in a carefully balanced system. Emperor Kadzar raised one clawed hand, and the council fell silent. Ambassador Mitchell, you have heard the concerns. Several members of this council believe you should be eliminated before you become too dangerous. They propose a swift execution, done in such a way that the oath's backlash is contained and directed away from populated areas. Claire's heart hammered in her chest, but she kept her voice steady.
And what do you believe, Emperor?
I believe, Kasthar said slowly,
that you are either the greatest threat my empire has ever faced, or the key to a future we cannot yet imagine. I am trying to determine which.
He stood, and his full height was impressive, even among the Valdran. Tell me, human, if we decided to execute you, would you fight back? The question hung in the air. Claire knew that her answer mattered more than anything else she might say today. She thought about lying, about claiming she would go peacefully, to make herself seem less threatening. But she had already learned that truth had power in this place. Yes, she said simply.
I would fight. I don't want to die, and I don't believe I've done anything wrong.
But more importantly, killing me wouldn't solve your problem. My oath is tied to Vorat's safety. If you kill me, what do you think happens to that power? Does it just disappear? Or does it explode outward, seeking to fulfill its purpose one last time? Murmurs rippled through the council. Kasthar's eyes narrowed.
You threaten us. I inform you, Claire corrected. You're right that we don't know what this oath will do.
None of us do. But killing me seems like the surest way to find out in the most catastrophic manner possible. She has a point, said a counselor Claire hadn't heard speak before. His name was Kelthris, and his scales were a deep blue-green that reminded her of Earth's oceans. The ancient texts are clear. Oaths of protection don't simply end with the death of the oathmaker. They seek fulfillment, even beyond death.
Then what do you propose, Kelthris?
Vess asked acidly. We keep her alive and hope she doesn't decide to become a tyrant? I propose we learn, Kelthris said. He looked at Claire with something that might have been curiosity rather than fear. The texts exist. The knowledge exists. We have simply forgotten it, because we thought we would never need it again. I volunteer to study the ancient archives and work with Ambassador Mitchell to understand her oath. So she can learn to control it better? Bonnie asked. So she can become even more dangerous? So we can understand what we're dealing with, Kelthris replied. Ignorance serves no one. Knowledge, at least, gives us options.
The council debated for hours. Claire stood the entire time, her legs aching while Valdran voices argued over her fate.
Some wanted her dead. Others wanted her imprisoned. A few, like Kelthris, wanted to study and understand before making any decisions. Finally, Kasthar called for silence.
We will vote. Those in favor of immediate execution? 3 hands rose.
Thane, Vess, and one other counselor, whose name Claire hadn't learned.
Those in favor of indefinite imprisonment?
2 more hands.
Those in favor of study and observation?
with restrictions on Ambassador Mitchell's movements and activities. 5 hands rose, including Kelthrus's. Kazdar nodded.
The Council has decided. Ambassador Mitchell will remain alive and free, but under constant supervision.
Kelthrus, you will lead the research into ancient oath protocols. Counselor Vess, you will oversee security measures to ensure the ambassador cannot abuse her power. We meet again in 1 month to assess the situation. Claire felt her knees go weak with relief, but forced herself to remain standing and composed. Thank you, Emperor.
Don't thank me yet,
Kazdar said.
You have survived today, but you are not safe. There are those in this empire who will see you as a threat, regardless of what this council decides. Watch yourself, human.
And pray that your oath doesn't make situations worse instead of better. The council dismissed her, and Vorath finally approached. That could have gone worse, he said quietly, as he escorted her from the chamber. They wanted to kill me, Claire said, her voice shaking now that the immediate danger had passed. Only some of them. Others are more curious than afraid. Vorath guided her through corridors of black stone. Kelthrus is a good choice to lead the research. He's fair, and he actually believes in learning rather than just confirming what he already thinks. They walked in silence for a while. Then Vorath said, Claire, I need to tell you something. There was another attempt on my life last night. Claire stopped walking. What? Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to see what would happen without alerting you. Vorath's expression was troubled.
An assassin entered my chambers while I slept. He had a blade designed to pierce Valdrin's scales, and he was highly trained.
He should have killed me easily. But he didn't. He couldn't. Every time he moved to strike, something went wrong. His blade caught on the bed frame. His foot slipped on smooth stone. A wind that shouldn't exist in a sealed chamber blew the curtain across his face. Finally, he fled, convinced that I was protected by ancient magic. Vorath looked at her intently.
I never woke up, Claire.
I slept through the entire attempt. Your oath protected me even though you had no idea I was in danger.
Claire felt cold. That means it's working even when I'm not consciously trying to protect you. Yes? Which means it's far more powerful than we thought. Vorath started walking again, faster now. That's not all.
I've been reviewing security reports from the past week. There have been 7 suspicious accidents involving people who spoke against you in council meetings.
Nothing fatal, but strange coincidences. Equipment malfunctions. Food poisoning. One counselor's transport ship developed engine trouble and had to make an emergency landing. You think my oath is protecting you by hurting people who threaten you politically? Claire's voice rose.
But I would never want that. The oath doesn't care what you want consciously. It cares about fulfilling its purpose, keeping me safe.
And apparently, it has decided that people who want to separate us or harm you are threats to my safety. Vorath stopped at a door and opened it, revealing a vast library filled with crystal tablets and ancient scrolls. This is Kelthrus's research archive. He wants to meet with us both. Inside, Kelthrus was already working, surrounded by stacks of tablets that glowed with faint text. He looked up as they entered. Ah, good. Prince Vorath, Ambassador Mitchell. I've been reviewing the texts about ancient oaths, and I have both good news and bad news. Start with the good news, Claire said. The good news is that oaths like yours can be managed. There are protocols, meditations, ways of focusing the power so it responds to your conscious will rather than operating on its own. Kelthrus gestured to the tablets around him. It will take time and effort, but you can learn to control it. And the bad news? Vorath asked. Kelthrus's expression turned grave.
The bad news is that we need to act quickly. Your oath is growing stronger every day, feeding on your emotional connection to the prince.
The more you care about him as a person rather than as a political partner, the more powerful the protection becomes. And there's a threshold. If the oath grows too strong before you learn to control it, it will develop a form of consciousness, a will of its own focused entirely on protecting Prince Vorath by any means necessary.
What does that mean?
Claire asked, though she was afraid she already knew.
It means the oath could start making decisions about what constitutes a threat. It might decide that the entire council is dangerous and should be removed.
It might determine that keeping Prince Vorath locked away from all possible harm is more important than his freedom or happiness. It might conclude that the only way to truly protect him is to eliminate anyone who could potentially hurt him. Kelthras looked between them seriously. Including you, Ambassador. If it decides that your human fragility makes you a vulnerability he cannot afford. Vorath moved closer to Claire instinctively, then caught himself and stepped back, but not before Claire saw the concern in his eyes. "How long do we have?" she asked. Difficult to say.
It depends on how quickly your bond deepens. Days, perhaps weeks.
Certainly not months. Kelthras pulled out a crystal tablet. "We begin training immediately."
Ambassador Mitchell, you need to learn ancient Valdrin meditation techniques. Prince Vorath, you need to help her by maintaining appropriate emotional distance.
The oath feeds on genuine connection. If you two become truly close, we may run out of time. Claire looked at Vorath and saw her own fear reflected in his golden eyes. They were trapped in an impossible situation. To save themselves and everyone around them, they needed to not care about each other. But they were married, living in close proximity, and Claire was realizing with uncomfortable clarity that she was starting to actually like the serious, dutiful prince who had been thrust into this situation just as unwillingly as she had been.
We'll do whatever it takes, Claire said firmly. Teach me how to control this.
Kelthras nodded.
Then we begin now. We have no time to waste.
The meditation chamber was deep beneath the palace, carved into living rock that predated the empire itself. Claire sat cross-legged on the cold stone floor, trying to follow Kelthras's instructions. Around her, crystals embedded in the walls pulsed with soft light, synchronized to her breathing.
"Feel the oath," Kelthras said from somewhere behind her. "Don't reach for it.
Don't try to control it. Simply acknowledge its presence." Claire had been doing this for 6 hours a day for the past 2 weeks. Her back ached, her legs had fallen asleep twice, and she still couldn't sense the oath the way Kelthras described. She felt normal, human, powerless. "I don't feel anything," she said, frustration creeping into her voice.
That's because you're trying too hard. The oath isn't separate from you.
It's woven into your very being now. Kelthras moved into her field of vision. Tell me, when you breathe, do you feel your lungs working? Not unless I think about it. Exactly. The oath has become that natural to you. It operates whether you're aware of it or not. Kelthras sat down across from her. But we need you to become aware. We need you to bring it into your conscious control before it develops its own patterns of behavior. How much time do we have left? Claire asked. Kelthras hesitated. Less than I hoped.
The incidents are increasing. Yesterday, a servant who prepared Prince Vorath's meal became violently ill before she could serve it.
The food was fine. She simply collapsed. The oath determined she might be a threat, and acted preemptively. Claire's stomach turned. But she was just doing her job. The oath doesn't understand jobs or intentions. It only understands threats and non-threats.
Kelthras stood. We'll try a different approach. Tonight, Prince Vorath will join us.
Sometimes the oath responds more clearly when its subject is present. That evening, Vorath arrived at the meditation chamber wearing simple training clothes instead of his usual elaborate robes. He looked tired, and Claire wondered if he was sleeping any better than she was.
Kelthris says we need to do this together, Vorath said, sitting down beside her.
Not too close, Claire noticed. They were both being careful about proximity, about accidental touches, about anything that might deepen the bond between them.
I'm sorry about your servant, Claire said quietly.
You didn't consciously do anything?
Vorath looked at his hands.
But it is getting worse.
This morning, my father asked me a difficult question about taxation policy. I disagreed with him, we argued, and suddenly he had a coughing fit so severe he couldn't breathe. It passed, but Claire, the oath is starting to protect me from any discomfort, any challenge, anything it perceives as opposition. Even from your own father, Claire whispered. The magnitude of what she had done was finally becoming real. Vorath, we have to fix this.
I can't be responsible for hurting innocent people. Then clear your mind and focus, Kelthris instructed. Prince Vorath, place your hand on Ambassador Mitchell's shoulder. Let her feel the connection between you.
Vorath hesitated, then reached out. His scaled hand was warm against Claire's shoulder, and the moment he made contact, she felt it. A thread of energy, golden and strong, connecting her to him. It pulsed with her heartbeat, resonated with her breathing, and she could suddenly sense him in a way that had nothing to do with normal perception. She knew he was anxious, tired, worried about his father and his empire and the strange human woman whose oath had turned his life upside down.
I feel it, Claire gasped. It's like a rope made of light tying us together. Good, Kelthris said. Now follow that rope deeper.
Feel where it connects to the oath itself. Claire focused on the golden thread and felt it extend down into something vast and ancient within her. The oath wasn't just a promise anymore. It had become a living thing, a presence that filled her chest with warmth and power. She could sense its purpose. Protect Vorath, keep him safe, eliminate any threat. The simplicity of it was beautiful and terrifying. I see it, she said. It's so strong, Kelthris. How am I supposed to control something this powerful? You don't control it. You guide it. Show it your intentions, your understanding of what truly helps versus what truly harms. Kelthris's voice was calm, anchoring her. Right now, it operates on instinct. Teach it wisdom. Claire tried to communicate with the oath, to explain that not every challenge was a threat, that Vorath needed to be able to live his life without cosmic interference. The oath resisted, stubborn in its singular purpose. It didn't want wisdom. It wanted safety. A sudden alarm shattered the meditation. The crystals in the walls flared bright red, and Kelthris jumped to his feet. "What's happening?" Claire asked, but she already knew. She could feel it through the oath. Vorath was in danger. Real danger, not a political argument or a difficult question. Someone was actively trying to kill him. "The palace is under attack," Vorath said, his hand going to the weapon at his belt. "A strike force. They've breached the outer defenses. Who would dare attack the Imperial Palace?" Kelthris looked stunned. "The Council extremists," Vorath said grimly. "They've decided that if they can't convince the Council to execute Claire, they'll kill me instead. If I die, the Oath's backlash will destroy her, and their problem is solved." Claire felt the Oath surge within her, a tidal wave of protective fury. It wanted to lash out, to destroy anyone who threatened Vorath, to reduce the attackers to ash and memory. She struggled to hold it back, to maintain the fragile control she had just learned. "We need to get you to the safe rooms," Kelthris said, moving toward the door. "No." Vorath drew his weapon, a plasma blade that hummed with energy. "If we hide, they'll just keep coming. We end this now." "You can't fight them yourself," Claire protested. "There could be dozens of them. I won't be by myself." Vorath looked at her intently. I'll have you. Your oath will protect me, won't it? That's exactly what we're trying to prevent, Kelthrus said urgently. If Ambassador Mitchell unleashes the full power of the oath in combat, it could grow beyond any possibility of control.
It will taste violence and want more.
But Claire could feel the attackers getting closer. They were moving through the palace with military precision, killing guards, destroying security systems, heading straight for Vorath's position. She could sense their determination, their willingness to die if it meant completing their mission. We don't have a choice, she said. If they reach us, I won't be able to hold the oath back anyway. At least if we meet them on our terms, I can try to maintain some control. Vorath nodded and moved to the door. Claire followed, with Kelthrus trailing behind them, muttering prayers in ancient Valdran. They emerged into chaos. Smoke filled the corridors, and the sound of weapons fire echoed off stone walls. A group of attackers rounded the corner. 6 Valdran warriors in black armor, carrying advanced military weapons. They saw Vorath and raised their guns. The oath exploded outward. Claire felt it move through her like lightning. The attackers' weapons sparked and died in their hands. The floor beneath their feet cracked and tilted, sending them stumbling. One warrior's armor simply fell apart, the bindings dissolving as if they had never existed. But Claire fought for control. Instead of letting the oath kill the attackers, she focused it on disabling them, making them unable to fight but keeping them alive. The oath resisted, wanted blood, wanted to ensure these threats could never return. But Claire held firm, channeling all her will into a single command: protect Vorath by stopping them, not by destroying them. The warriors fell unconscious, their bodies intact, but their minds temporarily shut down by the oath's power. Keep moving, Vorath said, and they ran deeper into the palace. They encountered 3 more groups of attackers. Each time, Claire struggled with the oath, forcing it to incapacitate rather than kill. Each time it became slightly easier, as if the oath was learning from her guidance, but she could also feel it growing stronger, fed by the adrenaline and danger. Finally, they reached the throne room. Emperor Kafsar was there, surrounded by loyal guards, fending off the main strike force. Councillor Thaney stood among the attackers, his face twisted with fanatic determination.
This ends now, Kasthar, Thane shouted. Your alliance with humans will destroy us all.
Better the prince dies than the empire falls. You're a fool, Thane, Kasthar replied, his own weapon blazing. You've doomed yourself for nothing. Then Thane saw Vorath enter the room, and his eyes lit with terrible purpose. He raised a weapon Claire had never seen before, something that glowed with dark energy. Soul Ripper, Kelthrus gasped behind her. It can kill even through oath protection. It destroys the spirit directly. Thane fired. The oath moved faster than thought. It threw up a barrier of pure force between Vorath and the weapon's beam. But the Soul Ripper was designed to pierce exactly this kind of protection. The beam began to burn through inch by inch. Claire felt the oath's rage. It wanted to unleash everything, to tear Thane apart at the molecular level, to make an example of him that would terrify the galaxy for millennia. And Claire was tempted to let it. This being had just tried to kill Vorath with a weapon specifically designed to bypass her protection. But then she remembered what Kelthrus had said. If she let the oath taste true violence, if she allowed it to kill with its full power, it would develop patterns of behavior she could never break. So instead, Claire made a choice that went against every instinct. She didn't attack Thane. She didn't destroy him. She focused every ounce of the oath's power into a single purpose, making Vorath stronger. The oath shifted, understanding her intention. Instead of projecting outward as a weapon, it flowed into Vorath himself. His scales hardened, his reflexes sharpened, his mind cleared. The Soul Ripper beam hit him, but, with the oath channeling power directly into his body and spirit, he was able to withstand it. Vorath moved with impossible speed, crossing the distance to Thane in a heartbeat. He disarmed the counselor with a single strike and held him at blade point. "Yield," Vorath commanded. Thani stared at him in disbelief, then at Claire. "What are you?" he whispered. "Someone who keeps her promises," Claire said. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed to the floor, utterly exhausted. The effort of channeling that much power while maintaining control had drained her completely. The remaining attackers surrendered. The crisis was over. Kelthris helped Claire to her feet, his eyes wide with wonder.
Do you realize what you just did? You didn't use the oath as a weapon.
You used it as support, as enhancement. You protected Prince Vorath by making him stronger rather than by destroying his enemies.
Is that unusual? Claire asked weakly. It's revolutionary, Kelthris said.
The ancient texts speak of oaths being used as shields or swords, but never as empowerment. You've discovered something the ancients never considered.
Vorath approached, breathing hard but uninjured.
He looked at Claire with an expression she couldn't quite name. You could have killed Thane easily. The oath wanted to. I could feel it. Why didn't you? Because killing him wouldn't have protected you better than helping you protect yourself, Claire said.
And because I meant what I said at the ceremony. I promised to stand beside you, not above you.
Partners, remember? Something shifted in Vorath's face. The careful distance he had been maintaining cracked, and for the first time Claire saw genuine warmth in his golden eyes. Partners, he repeated softly. Emperor Kazdar stepped forward, surveying the scene. You have proven yourself today, Ambassador Mitchell. Not just your power, but your wisdom in using it. He looked at his son. Vorath, I believe we need to reconsider our approach to this oath. It may not be the threat we feared. With respect, Father, it's still dangerous, Vorath said. But perhaps dangerous in the way any great power is dangerous. It depends on who wields it and how.
The Council will meet again tomorrow. This attack has changed things.
Those who feared Ambassador Mitchell may now see her as an asset rather than a liability. Claire sat down on the steps of the throne, too tired to stand any longer. She had survived an assassination attempt, controlled an ancient cosmic force, and maybe, just maybe, started to turn the tide of opinion in her favor. But more than that, she had seen Vorath fight with courage and skill. She had felt his determination, his love for his people, his willingness to risk everything for what he believed was right. And she realized with a mixture of hope and fear that she was starting to care about him. Not because of political necessity or cosmic oaths, but because of who he was. The oath pulsed warmly in her chest, as if approving of this development. Claire closed her eyes and hoped that caring about him wouldn't make everything worse. The High Council chamber looked different in the morning light, where before it had seemed imposing and cold. Now Claire could see the beauty in the crystal walls, the way light danced through them and painted the floor with color. Or perhaps she was simply seeing things differently after last night's battle. She stood before the council again, but this time Vorath stood beside her rather than off to the side. His presence was both comforting and complicated. Since the attack, they had spent hours together, debriefing with security forces and reviewing what had happened. Each moment together had made the oath grow stronger, the connection between them deeper. Claire could feel him now, even when they were in different rooms, a constant warm presence at the edge of her awareness. Emperor Kazdar addressed the assembled counselors.
We have reviewed the events of last night. Councillor Thon and his followers have been imprisoned and will face trial for treason.
But that is not why we are here. We are here to discuss Ambassador Mitchell and her oath, and to make a decision about the future of our alliance with humanity. Councillor Vess stood, her silver scales catching the light. Last night proved that Ambassador Mitchell is even more dangerous than we feared. She disabled 24 trained warriors without breaking a sweat. She made Prince Vorath nearly invulnerable to a soul ripper.
What happens when she decides to use that power for conquest rather than defense? She had every reason to kill Thane, Kelthris countered. He tried to murder her husband with a forbidden weapon.
The oath wanted blood. But she chose mercy and wisdom instead.
That should tell us everything we need to know about her character. Character changes, Vess insisted.
Power corrupts. It's a universal truth. Then perhaps, Claire said quietly, you should ask yourselves why humans aren't already corrupt. The council turned to her. Kazthar gestured for her to continue. Claire took a deep breath. You keep saying that power corrupts, that I'll eventually become a tyrant. But humans live with power every day. Every parent has the power to harm their child, but most don't.
Every soldier has the power to kill, but most choose not to unless necessary. Every person with strength has power over those weaker, but most choose kindness instead.
She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each counselor. You're afraid of me because I can access cosmic forces through my oath. But the truth is, every human who has ever kept a promise, who has ever loved someone enough to sacrifice for them, who has ever stood by their word when it would be easier to break it, they're all touching the same fundamental force. The only difference is that your wedding ceremony was designed to channel that force, and I didn't know it.
What are you saying?
Asked Counselor Kess, the elderly Valdrin.
I'm saying that the power you fear isn't unique to me. It's inherent in the human capacity for genuine commitment.
You lost access to it because your culture became too cynical, too political. You stopped meaning what you said.
Claire gestured to Vorath. Your son knows this.
He spoke his vows as formality during our wedding, following protocol without conviction. That's why the oath only formed on my side initially.
Vorath stepped forward. She's right. I have spent my entire life saying things I was supposed to say, performing duties I was assigned, following protocols without questioning them. I never considered that words could have power beyond their political utility. He paused, then continued. But watching Claire these past weeks, I've learned something. She means everything she says, every promise, every commitment, every word. And that sincerity gives her strength that has nothing to do with cosmic forces. It's simply who she is. Beautiful sentiment, Vess said acidly. But it doesn't address the practical reality. What happens in 50 years when she's dead and the prince lives on? What happens if they have children who inherit this power?
What happens if other humans learn to invoke similar oaths? Then perhaps, said a new voice, humanity becomes the most powerful force in the galaxy. Everyone turned. A figure entered the chamber, moving with the careful grace of extreme age. Claire had never seen this Valdrin before. His scales were almost transparent with age, and his eyes were milky white. But there was power in his presence that made even Emperor Kazthar straighten with respect.
High Priest Morven, Kazthar said, bowing his head slightly. We are honored by your presence. I am too old to waste time on pleasantries, Morven said, his voice surprisingly strong.
I have spent the night reviewing the ancient texts, the oldest records we possess. I came to share what I learned. He moved to the center of the chamber with slow, deliberate steps.
The gods did not fear oaths of protection because they were powerful. They feared them because they represented something the gods themselves could not control, genuine love freely given. The chamber fell silent. The gods could command, Morven continued.
They could threaten, they could reward, they could manipulate, but they could not make someone truly care. They could not force authentic commitment. And when beings chose to bind themselves to each other through absolute love and conviction, that choice superseded even divine authority. He turned his milky eyes toward Claire. You, Ambassador Mitchell, have done something the gods themselves envied. You have chosen to love without reservation, to commit without conditions, to give your word and mean it with every fiber of your being.
I didn't love him when I made the vows, Claire said honestly.
I barely knew him. No, but you loved the idea of peace enough to commit yourself completely to making it work. You loved humanity enough to sacrifice your freedom for their safety. And you loved the principle of keeping promises enough to speak yours with absolute truth. Marvin smiled, a strange expression on his ancient face. Love is not just romance, child. It is commitment, sacrifice, dedication to something beyond yourself. And you have it in abundance. Vorath was staring at Claire with an expression she had never seen before. Wonder, perhaps, or recognition. So what do you propose, High Priest? Khazthar asked. I propose we stop fearing what Ambassador Mitchell represents and start learning from it. Morven turned to address the full council. The Valdrin Empire has endured for millions of years through strength and strategy. But we have become hollow. We say words without meaning them. We make alliances without honoring them.
We have forgotten the power of genuine commitment. He raised one clawed hand. Humanity remembers.
They are young, passionate, sincere. Everything we have forgotten how to be. Instead of seeing them as threats, we should see them as teachers.
You want us to learn from humans?
Vess sounded appalled.
I want us to remember what we once knew, Morven corrected. The ancient Valdrin made oaths that shaped reality.
We stopped because we thought we had evolved beyond such primitive emotionalism. But we didn't evolve. We stagnated. We became afraid to mean what we said, because meaning, it gave it power. And power meant vulnerability.
Counselor Kess leaned forward. You're saying we should encourage this kind of oath-making? Allow it to spread? I'm saying we should stop pretending that cold calculation is superior to passionate commitment.
Both have their place. Morven moved toward the door, his message delivered. But if you want my advice, Emperor, I would suggest you stop trying to contain Ambassador Mitchell and start trying to understand her. She is not a threat. She is a mirror, showing us what we have lost. The old priest left, and his words hung in the air behind him. Khazthar stood and paced across the platform, thinking. Finally, he spoke. Ambassador Mitchell, I have a question for you. If we asked humanity to teach other species about genuine commitment and oath-keeping, would your people agree? Claire considered carefully.
I think many humans would be willing to share our approach to promises and relationships, but you can't teach sincerity as a technique.
It's not a skill you learn. It's a choice you make every day. Then perhaps, Khazthar said slowly, the question is whether we are willing to make that choice ourselves. He looked at his son. Vorath, you spoke during our wedding ceremony with political formality. If given the chance to speak again with genuine conviction, would you? Vorath turned to Claire. She could feel his emotions through their bond. Fear, hope, uncertainty, and underneath it all, if I speak true vows, the oath becomes reciprocal. We would be bound to each other equally, both powerful, both vulnerable. Yes, Khazthar said. Which means both responsible for the consequences. Father, that could be dangerous, Vorath said. Everything worth doing is dangerous. Khazthar smiled, the first time Claire had seen the Emperor show anything like humor. Your wife has shown remarkable wisdom in wielding power she never asked for. Perhaps she deserves a partner who can share that burden, rather than simply being protected by it. Claire looked at Vorath, really looked at him. She had spent weeks trying not to care too much, trying to maintain distance, trying to prevent the oath from growing too strong. but in the process, she had come to know him. His dedication to his people, his intelligence, his dry humor that occasionally broke through his formal exterior, his kindness to servants and subordinates, his courage in facing threats. She had come here expecting to marry a stranger for political purposes. Instead, she had found someone she genuinely respected, someone she could imagine actually caring about.
It's your choice, Claire said to Vorath. I made my vows without fully understanding them.
You would be doing this with full knowledge of the consequences. Don't do it because your father suggests it, or because the council wants balance. Do it only if you mean it. Vorath was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Kelthris, what would I need to say? What words would create a reciprocal oath? The vows don't matter as much as the conviction behind them, Kelthris said. Speak from your heart with absolute truth, and the oath will form. Vorath nodded. He turned to face Claire directly, taking both her hands in his. The council watched in absolute silence. Claire Mitchell, Vorath said, his voice steady. I spoke empty words at our wedding because I thought that was what duty required. But I have learned from you that duty without heart is meaningless. So I say now what I should have said then, with full understanding and complete conviction. He squeezed her hands gently. I promise to stand beside you as your partner and husband. I swear to protect you from all harm, to honor you in all things, and to love you for as long as we both exist in this universe or any other. The crystal chamber blazed with light, so intense that everyone had to shield their eyes. Claire felt the oath reshape itself. No longer one-sided, but balanced. Energy flowed between her and Vorath in a perfect circle, each protecting the other, each empowering the other. She could feel his mind, touching hers, not invasively but gently, and she knew he could feel hers in return. When the light faded, they were both breathing hard. The connection between them was so strong now that Claire wasn't sure where she ended and Vorath began. But instead of feeling trapped or overwhelmed, she felt complete, balanced.
Remarkable, Helthros whispered. A balanced oath.
The ancient texts spoke of them, but I've never seen one. Casthar looked at them both with approval.
You have created something new.
Not just an alliance between your peoples, but a genuine partnership. Perhaps that is what we needed all along. Counselor Vess still looked uncertain, but even she couldn't deny what they had just witnessed. What happens now?
Now, Casthar said, we proceed with the treaty as planned.
But we add a new provision. Humanity will establish an embassy here on Valdros Prime, and we will establish one on Earth. We will exchange scholars, teachers, diplomats. We will learn from each other. He looked at Claire and Vorath, and these two will serve as living proof that different species can find common ground, not through political convenience, but through genuine connection. The council voted. This time even Vess abstained rather than opposing. The treaty would proceed. The alliance would stand. As the council dismissed and the councillors filed out, Vorath and Claire remained standing in the center of the chamber, still holding hands. I meant it, Vorath said quietly. Every word. I know, Claire replied. I could feel it. Are you afraid of what this means? Claire thought about it. She was bound to an alien prince in a marriage that started as politics and became something real. She had power she never asked for and responsibilities she never imagined. The future was uncertain, complicated, probably difficult. No, she said finally. I'm not afraid, because whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Vorath smiled, a real smile that transformed his face.
Partners!
Partners, Claire agreed. They walked out of the council chamber together, two beings from different worlds bound by an oath that had terrified the gods themselves. But they weren't afraid. They had discovered something the gods never understood, that the greatest power in the universe wasn't the ability to destroy or control. It was the simple human act of keeping a promise and meaning it with all your heart. Behind them, Kelthris watched them go and smiled. He made a note in his research tablet. Day 1 of the New Age. Humanity teaches the galaxy to mean what it says. Preliminary results. Promising. The crystal chamber dimmed as the sun set outside, painting everything in shades of crimson and gold. And in that light, a new future began to unfold, built not on fear or power, but on two people who chose to trust each other completely. It was, Kelthris thought, the most human thing imaginable, and perhaps the most divine.